Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Nëïgsëndöïg Cöcülës show. My name is Nëïgsëndöïg Cöcülës, the namesake for this here podcast. Before I begin today's episode, I will disclose that it is being recorded with a new-to-me microphone, a Samsung Q9U, which is a USB and XLR dynamic broadcast microphone. And I will be using some plugins, hopefully to at least process the vocals well. Now, this was recommended for content creation, so I went with a dynamic mic, but it was kind of hard for me to find. Now, there is an XLR version of this microphone that is $50 less than the version I got, which has both USB and XLR capabilities. That said, let's move on to a book I finished on October 30th, 2025, called Laws of Life: Ditch the System, Design Your Life. It was penned by Jack Spirko. That is not his real name. He goes by Jack, though. Spirko is the proprietor of the Survival Podcast, a long-standing, basically preparedness and other thing podcast, which started on June 20th, 2008. So over 17 years ago. This was shortly or during the housing bubble burst. Long story short, the whole goal of this book is to get you out of the mindset of accepting a subtle, slow drip poison of bad advice, empty ambition, and systems designed for you to be mediocre. And if I'm not mistaken, mediocre is popular nowadays. Bad news if you ask me. There are 16 natural law principles that Jack attempts to codify in his life, and guess what? They worked for him. Not all of them may work for someone, but they should be attempted regardless. Then you can evaluate them to see if there was success gathered from them. All 16 might work. There's a chance they don't. Each of these laws are practical, and you can apply them yourself. Many people will not do this because they want to be lazy, mediocre, and broke. I'm going to be pulling a Jack Spirko here today. So if you're not going to be able to handle this type of stuff, I'm sorry, but this is not the episode series for you. I will be doing 4 parts on this one, 4 episodes on it. Now, every single one of these laws is interwoven, such as, for example, laws 8, 9, and 15. Now, they will require multiple reads if people do not understand the system. I personally don't understand it fully as of yet, but maybe sometime in the future, I will. That said, let's go straight to the first law of these 16 principles. Law 1. Always be on time. When you are late, you are saying your time is more valuable than the other person's is. Now, let's think about it for a moment. This is an integrity issue and connected to a different law where it basically says you have to stick to your word. This is a form of sticking to your word, being on time for something. Actually, you want to be early, which is more preferable than being on time. As it is said, I will have to paraphrase it here, early is on time is tardy, and tardy is never acceptable. Now, this has to be met because this is a commitment. This is regardless of any excuse that comes out of your mouth. From Jack's own words on the matter, this, with edits by me, is as follows. Time is the root of this tree of wealth. It not only takes time to grow your wealth, how you spend your time has a lot to do with how fast this tree grows and how many major branches it forms. What we're talking about in this section is social capital. If you know what you're doing, social media is a good way to gain social capital. Now, I don't use mainstream social media with the exception of YouTube, but this is just my business practices. Now, to gain social capital, you need to be seen as someone who is reliable, someone who is dependable. You need to be someone who actually knows what the flip they're doing and who is professional with something. It can be whatever the flip it is. You have to be a professional at something that you are actually paid to do and you are extremely skilled at. Now, in the introduction to this book, and at multiple points throughout it, it is established that your brain is the best self-learning computer you have, despite it being a natural organ. If you basically program it with bad code, which we do all the time, it will lead to bad results. Being late is programming the brain saying, I value my own time more than my peers if I make a commitment to be on time at somewhere. From Jack's own words on this, with edits by me, it's this, as follows. Every day, every action you take is writing, rewriting, and executing code in the computer that is your mind. You are either a passive or active programmer. And sadly, most people simply take the passive approach. If you want a life that is rich and fulfilling, you can't do that. You have to use intent and filtering to write useful and positive code into your mind. It's a no-brainer when you look into this sort of thing. That's just how the human mind works. As a side note for myself, I have been fulfilling most of these laws, if not all of them, for 4 years at this point. I have been doing Cöcülës Nation for 4 years. That's my main YouTube channel for those that are unaware. I have also been doing this channel for about a couple of years now. Been only doing this podcast since January 8th of 2025. And I have a third channel which I am not doing anything for except video editing anymore. I have someone else in Mugita Sokyo, an aspiring virtual YouTuber, who is doing the narration for this channel for me. We sound very similar to each other, but his voice is probably lower than mine. You'll know who is who that way. Anyway, if you are essentially late all the time, if you have a chronic tardiness problem, this will lead to the sorry but cycle, which is complete nonsense. From Jack's own words on this, with edits by me, this is as follows. I recently saw a post on social media, and this is what it said. When you are late, don't say you are sorry. Say thank you for waiting for me. It breaks the I'm sorry cycle. Excuse me, but what the flip? Are you kidding me? People actually think this is okay. What scrambled code were they writing into their mental computers? You don't break the I'm sorry cycle by changing I'm sorry to thank you. No, you break the cycle by meeting your flippin' commitments. Then you don't have anything to apologize for. Brutal. People are going to be ticked at me for this one. Don't shoot the messenger, boyos. Because I'm about to get into some territory those who can actually learn very well will be able to get into. For those who don't, it's going to take some time if you're slow. So I get that part. This beatdown will continue as things progress throughout the book. Speaking of, there's also some code that you can write into your own brain yourself. Here is the first piece of mental code, as follows. Computer, if I'm not early, I'm late. That is so deceptively simple. Being early is being on time. Therefore, you will be seen as reliable. You will be seen as someone who is dependable, someone who actually knows what the flip they're doing. This is the sign of a professional. Now, let's go into Law 2, which is this. Law 2. Always be frugal, never cheap. Frugality breeds wealth. Cheapness leads to poverty. You do not want to waste your money on almost anything. You certainly want to be careful with what you buy. It's a balance of quality over price. In this case, Jack considers words like cheap to be basically bad words, despite using what's called adult language multiple times in the book. Seriously, why do people not understand that using profane adult words within certain contexts is just not a problem if you know what they mean? Anyway, words are the primary programming tool, and cheap is a programming word. You need to be affordable and good quality if you want something and you can invest in it. More on that later. Now, there is, in fact, a definition given for frugality, and it is this. Frugality. Economical in use or expenditure, prudently saving or sparing, never wasteful. Now, how about an example from yours truly? Future episodes, starting with this one, will be recorded with a Samson Q9U USB version, which is $150 on Amazon. This is a broadcast dynamic microphone, which will be my microphone of choice for voiceover work. Most of the episodes, so I'm talking about episode 1, even the pilot. So the pilot all the way through episode 26, they were recorded using a Samson CO1U, which is a large diaphragm USB condenser microphone. It was around $50 or so the time that I got it. Now, from Jack's own words on this, with edits by me, this is as follows. Every time you speak or think, every action you take is causing those self-learning algorithms to code more sequences and pathways. The cheap way leads to a view of what you can't have, a view of scarcity. The frugal path constantly challenges the mental computer with the question, how can I have blank? The best way to kick in the mind is to challenge it with questions. Now, there is mental code in this chapter as well. This is it, as follows. Computer, every time I think of something I would like to have in my life, execute the following code. How can I have this thing? And what will I have to give up in order to do so? Is this talking about opportunity cost? That was what I noticed when I first read it. Now, say you want to do something long-term, like going to a college. Well, you need to do some calculations using a spreadsheet program like Microsoft Excel. I personally recommend LibreOffice Calc or the OnlyOffice or OpenOffice equivalent. But that is just my FOSS brain. From Jack's own words on the matter, with edits by me, it's this, as follows. I know a former teacher who had his students do this exercise in high school. It almost got him fired. Wait, don't blow past that. Think about it for a minute. All this man did was recommend his students fire up Excel and run the numbers. And the district wanted to fire him. I can tell you why. Because while the cost of a college degree has gone up a great deal in the last 50 years, the value of it to employers has gone down. Anyone with a rudimentary understanding of economics would understand this isn't possible in a true market-based economy. So in other words, more kids go to college? Great! You just went ahead and devalued that specific degree. Now, to do this, you need to look at the field of study you want to get into. You need to find the median average, the average median starting income for said degree. You need to know the cost to move and get a good job in this field. What is the cost of living? The average rate of advancement 5 years from now, 10 years from now? What's the salary when you are there longer? This is how you determine the income to be used to service the debt to accumulate from this path. This can be done not just with college, but also even with a trade school or a coding boot camp. Now, if you understand what I explained in the bonus section of this episode on Wavelake, bonus episodes 1 and 2 kind of explain why I cannot do a trade professionally. Now, don't get me wrong, I can learn one, but I cannot be paid to do it. No can do. I am actually very well incompatible with it. Just listen to the bonus episodes on the Podcast 2.0 side, and you'll understand where I'm coming from. Hopefully. Anyway, let's go to the next law. Now, the next two laws are going to be pretty short, so we'll be able to blast through these real quickly. But Law 3, here we go! Law 3. Everything's a cycle. If you want to know what's coming next, just look at what happened before. Now, this is all about what we lack: pattern recognition. It is said that we study history to avoid the mistakes of the past. That isn't entirely true in reality. From Jack's own words on this, with edits by me, it's this, as follows. While there is some small truth in it, it is basically nonsense that adults tell children to get them to do their homework. I think telling them the truth might be more effective. The truth is that we study history because almost every mistake in the past will be made by some moron, despot, or tyrant once again in the future. So we need to recognize and respond to it accordingly when it happens again. This sword, like most swords, cuts both ways. In other words, you study history to recognize the patterns, and we are taught not to notice these patterns. Now, if you are one of my American listeners, you'll realize that you've been to these, what I will call prison camps, that basically teach you how to not recognize patterns, how to actually be memory hold. I read recently that we have been losing the art of learning cursive. I need to learn cursive, honestly, because I never got a chance to do that. Many, many other things I will not be getting into here, especially when we get into the uglier parts of pattern recognition. This I cover in bonus episode number 3. And as a gamer and musician myself, I recognize patterns relatively easily in some cases. Due to my autism, I don't in others. Now, for an example of this, when people hide something that they did, look at how they behaved in the past. People who try to do this will certainly use these patterns. You will be able to recognize them immediately if you know what to look for in one of these liars. Especially if you look into how a person lies and gets the flip away with it. It can be a politician of some sort. It could be your boss. So, let me do an example with a boss. You have a work laptop. Your boss said that it was a clean install of a GNU/Linux distribution. Little did you know, you turned on something like btop or htop, and you find, this is stuff I don't see on my normal machine. So you just kill the processes, and your machine is faster as a result. This is something called bossware. Ghost. Again, I've mentioned this guy many, many times on this podcast. Ghost actually has an article on his blog about bossware and how you deal with it. Now, this is a hypothetical example. Most work computers will have wind blows. That's what y'all should be calling Windows, by the way. Wind blows. Because it is bloated to an absolute magnitude of high heaven. And the amount of bloatware, some of it, is spyware. This will include the bossware if your work provides to you a Windows laptop with all kinds of absolutely proprietary junk on it. Oh, and Dr. John Padfield, I have a video of his down below talking about a piece of bossware that basically could be something out of Minority Report or Black Mirror. Just saying. Even your significant other could use these patterns, and you do not recognize these patterns almost immediately. I don't have an example for that one because this is primarily a alt tech podcast. Alt tech as in free software advocacy, which I do a lot, with some exceptions. Now we go on to Law 4, the final law for Part 1, and it's this. Law 4. Only take advice from the competent. Never take the advice of anyone on any specific thing that they have not proven to be highly competent at. This is something that is well known, coming from a banger of a book by George S. Clason called The Richest Man in Babylon. Now, there is an excerpt used in the book, and it is this, as follows. Secure the advice of those experienced in the profitable handling of gold. Let their wisdom protect thy treasure from unsafe investments. Yep, of course the accent is silly, but this is 1920s and I wanted to pull a different accent. Hopefully, I did okay. I digress from that. Another way to put this is that if someone is doing really, really good on something and it seems they have it down pat, they have it to an art form, if you will, then this individual is competent in what they do. This is a qualifier. If you're competent in what you do and you're good at it, you are, in fact, qualified enough to give advice that may or actually it will work, to be fair. For you, you may have it down pat, but for others who want to learn, you can give them advice on what they want to do based upon probably some parameters. You need to have them set the parameters so you can advise them on where to go from there. Let's actually do an example of this so I can really demonstrate this. I have been running this podcast since January 8th of 2025. So at this point, with the staggered episode release schedule, we have about 40 or so weeks. But then again, I also have some bonus episodes on Wavelake, which that's where you find the Podcast 2.0 exclusive episodes on a Wavelake RSS feed. Or you can just find it with the Podcast 2.0 thing or whatever the flip you have. Or you can just get the RSS feed, which is on the YouTube side, linked below. Just copy that into your Podcast 1.0 player of choice. We call it Podcast 1.0 because it doesn't have this specialized stuff for. Doesn't matter. What it does matter is that I've been doing this podcast, despite a staggered schedule as of late, for about a year's time, if you think about it. So I may have some advice on at least how to get started with a podcast, but I will be recommending free software compatible computer applications. So, for example, I am using Ardor to record this podcast. Now, I am testing some proprietary plugins so I can see exactly how well they will work for my workflow. And my goodness, we've got a good workflow for me. But I digress. The whole point is that you are the one that is good at something, you're passionate about something, and you can actually be competent with it. That's the key. This is how you can give advice. But if you ask for advice to someone who is competent and good at something, and you ask them, hey, how do you do this? Or what should I do to get started? If you ask for advice from a professional in something, you take it, you test it, and then you evaluate it after some amount of time. About 30 days, 60 days, about 120, doesn't matter. Evaluate then and see where you can go from there. Now, here's an example of what not to do. You ask somebody for some advice, and one of their relatives had drowned. Well, this individual, whose relative had drowned, advises that you get life jackets to prevent drowning. This should be ignored because they already should have had a life jacket if they were unable to swim. So this is stupid, to say the least. To end this episode today, this chapter actually covers confirmation bias. And I do, in fact, have the definition Jack gives. I will be paraphrasing this here, but this is how I see it as follows. Confirmation bias. Interpreting new evidence as confirmation of something that already exists in beliefs or theories thereof, without looking into the validity of them first. So, in other words, if you seek the advice of someone who doesn't know jack diddly squat about something, and you sell the idea to them, what you're looking is a confirmation rather than speaking with a professional on how to go about it. That's literally all this chapter is about. Now, again, this book is available on Amazon, which is where I went ahead and bought it myself. I will also be buying the second iteration of Laws of Life and reading the flip out of it once this is released. We don't know when it'll be released, but I'm sure Jack will have it released by the time I'll do another episode. Oh, and yes, I will do a mini-series on the second book as well. And I will even do what I did in the podcast 2.0 section. This is gonna get interesting. I'll do what I did in the podcast 2.0 section and maybe add to what I did in this episode already. That said, every episode releases every Wednesday afternoon, provided there are no scheduling conflicts, at 4 p.m. Pacific Time. You can listen to this podcast on Wavelake, YouTube, and any other Podcast 2.0 player, such as Podverse, Fountain, AntennaPod, and many more of the like. You can also copy the RSS feed, located in the show notes YouTube side, and paste it to a player that doesn't support the Podcast 2.0 open standard. I listen to this podcast on AntennaPod on my Google Pixel 8 Pro, or using Sono because I have the episodes myself. I think you can download the episodes too and put them in your podcast player of choice so you can listen to them locally. Anyway, that said, I am out of time for today's episode. This has been the Nëïgsëndöïg Show for this week. Thank you, and good night.